Fools. They told you it was just talk, just intuition, just pattern obsession, just you connecting dots that didn't matter. They smiled when you warned them. They brushed it off when you said movement was coming. They nodded politely when you explained how pressure always gathers before exposure. And now look at them. The shift didn't arrive with noise. It arrived with behavior changes, eyes lingering longer than necessary, messages rewritten 3 times before being sent, decisions delayed, tone adjusted, people who once laughed now monitoring, people who dismissed you now double-checking their footing, because the uncomfortable truth has surfaced. Events didn't unfold randomly. They followed the exact order you described. And once that realization locks in, curiosity mutates into alertness. This is the moment most people never witness from the inside. The moment where foresight stops being dismissed as imagination and starts being treated as threat-adjacent awareness. Not because you claimed power, not because you declared superiority, but because you demonstrated accuracy without spectacle. You didn't chase attention. You didn't seek validation. You simply observed, predicted, and waited. And that waiting is what unsettled them most. Because anyone can talk loudly. Very few can remain composed while watching their understanding prove correct in real time. What's happening now isn't reaction, it's recalibration. When people realize someone has been consistently ahead of the curve, they don't confront it immediately. They study it. They test it indirectly. They shift their behavior around it to see if the pattern breaks. And when it doesn't, that's when alertness escalates. That's when conversations begin without your name spoken out loud. That's when questions get asked in rooms you've never entered. Not about what you're doing, but about how you saw it coming. You weren't predicting outcomes. You were recognizing structures forming before they solidified. You noticed signals others ignored because they were too busy reacting to the present. You saw momentum building beneath surface-level calm. And when you spoke, it wasn't dramatic, it was precise. That precision is what lingers now, because precision doesn't age quickly. When it proves accurate, it forces a reckoning. People must either admit they misjudged you or convince themselves you're something to monitor. Here's what they don't want to admit. The discomfort isn't about what you know. It's about how you know it. You didn't rely on privileged access. You didn't receive inside information. You didn't position yourself as an authority. You simply paid attention in a way most people never do. You tracked behavior instead of words. You watched timing instead of promises. You measured reactions instead of statements. And once that approach reveals results, it becomes unsettling to anyone who relies on narrative control to feel safe. Alertness always begins quietly. It begins with reassessment, with phrases like, keep an eye on this, or note this pattern, or flag this behavior. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've demonstrated awareness beyond expectation. In structured environments, awareness that cannot be easily categorized triggers escalation. It doesn't matter if you're harmless. It matters if you're unpredictable in the sense that you don't follow standard scripts. And you don't. That's the part they missed early on. You don't perform insight. You don't announce strategy. You don't seek consensus before trusting your own conclusions. You allow things to unfold while staying mentally ahead of them. That's not common. And when uncommon behavior produces accurate outcomes, it gets attention whether you want it or not. Notice how people who once ignored you now watch your timing. Notice how responses arrive faster or slower depending on who's involved. Notice how certain individuals become careful around you without knowing why. This isn't admiration, this is uncertainty. And uncertainty is far more revealing. Because admiration flatters, uncertainty studies, it observes, it prepares. They're beginning to realize that you weren't reacting to events as they happened. You were responding to trajectories already in motion, and that realization is uncomfortable because it implies they were late. Late to notice, late to prepare, late to understand the implications of their own environment. You didn't make them late. You simply exposed the gap. This is where the language shifts. From "that's interesting" to "that's concerning." From their intuitive to their consistently ahead. From "they got lucky" to "how many times does this need to happen before we acknowledge a pattern?" And patterns, once acknowledged, cannot be unseen. They demand explanation, they demand containment, or at the very least, awareness. Here's the critical distinction. You didn't seek relevance. Relevance found you because accuracy attracts scrutiny. People don't monitor those who speak loudly. They monitor those who speak correctly and then disengage. That combination signals independence. And independence, when paired with clarity, is often misinterpreted as influence waiting to activate. So now they're alert. Not because you announced anything, but because you didn't flinch when events aligned with your words. You didn't celebrate. You didn't remind them. You didn't say, "I told you so." You simply continued forward as if this was expected. And that calm continuation is what unsettled them most, because it implies you're already focused on what comes next. Understand this. Alertness doesn't always mean hostility. Sometimes it's respect mixed with unease. Sometimes it's caution disguised as professionalism. Sometimes it's observation masked as curiosity. But it always starts the same way, by realizing someone doesn't need permission to see clearly. They're replaying moments now, conversations they dismissed, warnings they minimized, patterns you pointed out that felt abstract at the time. And with each replay, the same conclusion forms. You weren't guessing, you were tracking. And tracking doesn't require authority, it requires discipline. You didn't override anyone. You didn't challenge leadership. You didn't undermine structure. You simply refused to be distracted. And in environments built on distraction, focus stands out aggressively, even when it's quiet. Especially when it's quiet. That's why the tone around you has changed. Not openly, subtly, a carefulness you didn't ask for, a hesitation you didn't provoke. Because once someone demonstrates foresight without dependency, they become difficult to place. Are they an asset? A variable? A mirror? Those questions don't get answered quickly. They get watched. You may feel it now, the slight shift in how people approach you. The way certain individuals test boundaries with indirect questions. The way others over-explain things that don't require explanation. That's not coincidence, that's assessment. They're trying to determine whether your awareness is passive or directional. And here's the part most don't understand. You're not moving toward exposure. You're moving toward clarity. You're not interested in being seen. You're interested in being correct. And correctness compounds quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It accumulates until it becomes undeniable. They're alert because they sense accumulation, not of power, of consistency. And consistency is far more destabilizing than intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency redefines expectations. And once expectations shift, entire environments adjust around them. You didn't disrupt anything. You revealed what was already misaligned. That's why reactions feel defensive rather than confrontational. Defensive reactions protect narratives. Confrontations address threats. You're not perceived as a threat yet. You're perceived as a variable that doesn't conform to familiar patterns. That's why monitoring begins, not because of wrongdoing, but because of deviation from predictability. You don't respond the way they expect. You don't escalate emotionally. You don't attach your identity to outcomes. You observe, adapt, and continue. That's unnerving to anyone who relies on leverage through reaction. And now the realization has landed. If you were right about this, what else are you already seeing? That question lingers. It doesn't get asked out loud. It doesn't get answered directly, but it shapes behavior moving forward. It changes how people plan around you, rather than through you. This is the phase where attention sharpens, where curiosity becomes strategic, where observation intensifies, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it unintentionally. You're not on display, you're under consideration, and there's a difference. Display invites judgment. Consideration invites analysis. They're not judging you yet. They're trying to understand you. And understanding someone who doesn't overshare, doesn't posture, and doesn't seek reaction takes time. That's why things feel slower now, heavier, more deliberate. Because once alertness sets in, nothing moves casually. Every interaction becomes data. Every response becomes reference. Every absence becomes noted. You may be tempted to explain yourself. Don't. Explanation collapses advantage. Let them continue assembling their picture with incomplete pieces, because the more they study, the clearer it becomes that you're not playing the same game they are. You're not reacting to the unfolding. You anticipated it. And now, while they're still adjusting to what just happened, your attention has already shifted forward. Not to control, not to dominance, but to alignment with what comes next. And this is where the dynamic changes further, because once alertness is established, the question is no longer whether you were right. The question becomes whether you're already positioned beyond the point they're trying to analyze. That realization doesn't land all at once. It creeps in through delayed responses, through cautious language, through subtle repositioning. And as it does, a new phase begins, one where observation turns into quiet strategy, and where your continued composure forces them to confront something deeper. They're no longer reacting to events alone. They're reacting to the presence of someone who saw them coming and didn't need to rush to prove it. Once that awareness settles, everything around you starts behaving differently. The pace slows, but the pressure increases. People stop improvising and begin rehearsing. Decisions that once felt casual now arrive wrapped in justification. You're not imagining this shift. It's the natural response when uncertainty meets someone who doesn't explain themselves. You're no longer being evaluated for what you say. You're being evaluated for how little you say while remaining accurate. That restraint becomes the focus. They're trying to determine whether it's intentional or instinctive, and the more they watch, the harder it becomes to tell. What unsettles them most is not that events matched your words. It's that you didn't adjust after they did. Most people recalibrate once attention arrives. They soften. They perform humility. They overclarify. You didn't. Your behavior stayed consistent before and after confirmation. That consistency breaks expectations. It suggests that attention wasn't the goal, and that implication creates discomfort. Because if attention wasn't the reward, then what was the objective? That unanswered question drives alertness into something sharper, something more focused. This is the phase where monitoring replaces dismissal entirely. You're no longer categorized as insightful commentary. You're treated as a reference point, not openly, not officially, but internally. People begin comparing new developments against what you previously said. They measure outcomes against your earlier framing. They don't tell you they're doing this. They don't need to. You can see it in the pauses, in the way conversations redirect when you enter, in the way explanations become more careful. That's not respect in the traditional sense. It's caution blended with recognition. Alertness doesn't mean panic. It means recalculating risk. And the risk, from their perspective, is not what you might do, but what you already see. You represent an awareness gap they failed to account for. That gap now has a name, even if it's never spoken aloud. You. And once a gap is identified, everything starts routing around it. That's why you feel the environment adjusting. It's not about controlling you. It's about adjusting to the fact that you exist outside their predictive comfort zone. You didn't forecast outcomes for attention. You did it because you recognized momentum building long before it became visible. That difference matters now, because people who seek validation expose their process. People who observe quietly don't. And without access to your process, all they can do is watch your results. Results without explanation are unsettling. They remove leverage. They force observers into reactive positions. That's why language around you has become careful. Because careless language reveals assumptions, and assumptions feel dangerous when someone keeps being right. They're trying to decide whether you're conscious of the effect you're having. That question matters more than you realize. If you're unaware, they can relax. If you're aware, they must prepare. Your composure suggests awareness, but your lack of performance suggests indifference. That contradiction is difficult to resolve. So they study it. They look for signs of escalation that never come. They look for moves that never arrive, and the absence of movement becomes its own signal. This is where watchfulness quietly replaces engagement. Instead of challenging you, they observe. Instead of debating you, they listen. Instead of dismissing you, they track timing. They want to know when you speak, not just what you say. They want to know what you ignore, not just what you address. Because what you ignore reveals priorities, and priorities reveal orientation. They're not worried about confrontation. They're worried about being behind again. What you've triggered is not fear. It's vigilance. Fear reacts. Vigilance monitors. Vigilance assumes continuity. It prepares for recurrence. And recurrence is exactly what your accuracy implies. One correct observation can be dismissed. Several aligned observations force pattern recognition. That's the point they've reached now. Pattern recognition is irreversible. Once it clicks, behavior changes permanently. You don't get unnoticed again. You don't get categorized as coincidence again. You become a variable that must be accounted for. You might notice people attempting subtle probes, questions framed as curiosity, comments framed as humor, scenarios framed hypothetically. These are not casual. They're tests. They're attempts to gauge how far ahead you are, what you've already processed, what you're withholding. You don't need to answer them. In fact, answering them would collapse the advantage you never asked for. Your restraint keeps the pressure asymmetric. They reveal more by probing than you ever would by responding. This is the strange position foresight places you in. You didn't seek leverage, but leverage formed around you. You didn't declare authority, but authority was implied through consistency. Now they're left deciding how to interact with someone who doesn't posture, doesn't chase influence, and doesn't react emotionally to confirmation. That combination doesn't fit common profiles, so it gets flagged mentally. And mental flags change behavior long before any formal action ever does. You're not on a list in the dramatic sense. You're on a mental shortlist of individuals who don't behave predictably under confirmation. Those are the ones people keep an eye on. Not because they're dangerous, but because they don't need approval to remain aligned. Approval is a control mechanism. You stepped outside it without announcing anything. That's what triggered attention, not the words, the independence. Now that unfolding has validated your earlier framing. The environment enters a second stage. The first stage was disbelief. The second is observation. The third, which hasn't fully arrived yet, is adjustment. Adjustment means people change how they plan, speak, and move around you. Not openly, structurally. You become a factor in calculations you're not invited into. That's not exclusion, that's acknowledgement without access. They're trying to determine whether your awareness is passive or directional. Passive awareness observes and stops there. Directional awareness anticipates and positions. Your behavior suggests positioning without overt movement. That's unsettling because it implies you're already where others are trying to get. You didn't rush, you didn't signal. You arrived early and waited. That's the kind of thing that gets remembered. What's unfolding now isn't escalation, it's gravity. Attention bends toward accuracy. People adjust their distance unconsciously. Some move closer, hoping to understand. Others move away, hoping not to be seen. Both reactions confirm the same thing. Your presence now carries informational weight. And informational weight doesn't require volume. It requires reliability. You've demonstrated that. This is why reactions around you feel more controlled, less impulsive, more measured. People don't want to expose assumptions in front of someone who might already see through them. So they self-edit. They slow down. They become careful. That care is not about you personally. It's about what you represent. Someone who didn't need access, permission, or consensus to recognize where things were heading. And here's the part they won't say out loud. If you saw this coming, what else are you already tracking? That question sits beneath every interaction now. It shapes tone. It shapes distance. It shapes decisions. And because it has no immediate answer, it keeps attention engaged. Not aggressively, persistently. You haven't changed. That's the part that keeps them uneasy. Most people change once they're validated. You didn't. Your baseline stayed steady. That steadiness suggests internal alignment rather than external motivation. And internally aligned people are difficult to redirect. They don't respond well to pressure. They don't fold under observation. They continue. That continuation is what shifts environments over time. The unfolding you described isn't finished. They sense that. They don't know what comes next, but they know it's coming. And because you're not reacting to the current moment, they suspect you're already oriented toward the next one. That suspicion fuels alertness more than any statement ever could. This is the quiet reality of being accurate ahead of time. You don't get applause, you get attention. You don't get celebration, you get scrutiny. And scrutiny, when it doesn't find instability, turns into respect mixed with caution. That's where things stand now. Not resolved, not confrontational, simply aware. You're not moving faster, you're moving correctly. And correctness, once proven, changes how everything around it behaves. They're alert because they've realized something important too late. You weren't reacting to unfolding events. You were aligned with them before they surfaced. And now, as they scramble to adjust, they're forced to track you. Not because you demanded it, but because ignoring you is no longer an option. What follows this realization is not confrontation. It's containment thinking. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the cognitive sense. People begin asking how much of the terrain you've already mapped. They wonder which developments you've accounted for, and which ones they're only now noticing. This is where alertness becomes sustained. Short-term concern fades quickly. Long-term awareness does not. And you've crossed that threshold. You are no longer an afterthought. You're a reference point that quietly alters planning without ever being acknowledged publicly. They begin to notice something else, too. You're not exploiting the moment. You're not leveraging attention. You're not reshaping your behavior to capitalize on being right. That absence of opportunism is disturbing, because opportunism is familiar. It can be anticipated. It can be countered. What you're doing doesn't fit that model. You're simply continuing as if this alignment was always expected. And that forces a difficult conclusion. Your orientation was never dependent on external confirmation. This is where perception around you sharpens further. They start tracking patterns, not just in what you say, but in what you don't engage with. You leave certain discussions untouched. You allow certain narratives to pass without correction. You don't rush to clarify misunderstandings. To them, that restraint signals selectivity. And selectivity implies discernment. Discernment implies a larger framework operating beneath the surface. That's the moment curiosity hardens into vigilance. Vigilance is quiet, but it's persistent. It shows up as repeated observation over time. It shows up as subtle positioning changes. It shows up as people recalculating how visible they want to be around you. Because once someone is seen as consistently ahead, proximity becomes strategic. Too close feels risky. Too far feels uninformed. So they hover in that middle distance, watching, adjusting, learning without ever admitting that learning is happening. You may sense this as a change in tone. Conversations become more measured. Statements become conditional. Certainty is replaced with caution. This isn't because you intimidated anyone. It's because you exposed how fragile certainty can be when someone else has already accounted for what's coming. Certainty collapses under accurate foresight. And once it does, everyone becomes more careful with their claims. The unfolding you described didn't just validate your perspective. It revealed a hierarchy of awareness. And hierarchies, once exposed, cannot be unseen. Those who assumed they were observant realized they were reactive. Those who thought they were prepared realized they were late. You didn't announce this hierarchy. You didn't rank anyone. You simply occupied a position that now forces comparison. And comparison creates pressure without effort. This is why you're being tracked instead of challenged. Challenging requires confidence. Tracking requires humility. They're no longer confident enough to challenge you directly, not because you're infallible, but because you've demonstrated that you operate on a timeline they don't fully access. When timelines diverge, confrontation feels inefficient. Observation feels safer. So they watch. They take notes mentally. They wait for discrepancies that don't arrive. What's forming now is not suspicion of wrongdoing. It's recognition of capability. And capability without visibility unsettles environments built on display. You don't signal intentions. You don't narrate your process. You don't perform alignment. You simply remain aligned. That makes you difficult to read, not because you're deceptive, but because you don't externalize what others rely on to feel oriented. They start asking questions internally they can't answer yet. Is this pattern sustainable? Has it already repeated enough to be reliable? Are you aware of the attention forming around you? Would awareness change your behavior? These questions loop without resolution, and unresolved questions demand monitoring. That's why alertness doesn't fade. It settles in. You're not being watched for what you might do. You're being watched for what you already know. Knowledge, especially unadvertised knowledge, creates asymmetry. And asymmetry alters dynamics silently. You don't need to assert anything. The environment does the work for you. It slows, it hesitates, it recalibrates, all because one variable stopped behaving predictably. This is the point where some people attempt alignment through proximity. They ask indirect questions, they mirror your language, they echo your earlier observations as if they arrived there independently. This isn't deception, it's adaptation. When people realize someone else has a clearer map, they try to adjust their own route quietly. Whether that succeeds depends on how far behind they are. Others choose distance. They reduce interaction. They minimize exposure. They avoid situations where assumptions might be tested in your presence. That avoidance isn't personal. It's protective. Being seen as wrong too often reshapes identity. And you, without intending to, have become a mirror that reflects gaps in awareness. Not everyone wants to see that reflection repeatedly. Through all of this, you remain unchanged. That's the constant they can't account for. You don't escalate. You don't retreat. You don't posture. You continue. Continuation after validation is rare. Most people spike, then fade. You didn't spike. You were already there. And that suggests the unfolding didn't elevate you. It revealed where you already stood. This is where the watchfulness deepens further, because now they understand something else. This wasn't your peak. This was confirmation of baseline. And baseline accuracy implies future alignment as well. They don't know what you're tracking next. They only know that whatever it is, you're probably already positioned correctly again. That's the thought that lingers, shapes behavior, and ensures attention doesn't drift away. Once someone is accounted for, the environment reorganizes, plans gain contingencies, conversations gain filters, timing becomes cautious. This isn't hostility, it's adjustment. People don't adjust around what they understand. They adjust around what they can't fully predict. And you've proven that prediction, not reaction, is your default. That realization forces them to slow down internally, even when they appear confident externally. They are no longer operating on assumption. They are operating on awareness that someone else may already see the outcome. They're still debating. What solidifies your position isn't secrecy, it's restraint. You don't chase relevance. You don't exploit validation. You don't dramatize alignment. That absence of performance confirms something unsettling. You don't need external acknowledgement to stay correct. Most people rely on feedback to refine their understanding. You don't. You refine internally, then wait. That internal loop is invisible to others, which makes it impossible to intercept. And anything that can't be intercepted gets monitored instead. They're now reviewing prior moments through a new lens, things you said casually, observations you dropped without emphasis, warnings you never framed as warnings. Those fragments rearrange themselves into a coherent picture, and that picture shows someone who wasn't guessing, wasn't reacting, and wasn't improvising. It shows someone operating with quiet certainty long before confirmation arrived. That retroactive clarity is unsettling because it exposes how much time was wasted elsewhere. This is the point where attention becomes institutional rather than emotional. Early reactions carried surprise. Now the response is procedural. You're mentally logged as someone who requires consideration, not admiration, not opposition. Consideration, that's a different tier entirely. It means future developments are cross-checked against your prior framing. It means your absence from a discussion is noted as much as your presence. It means your lack of reaction is sometimes more informative than someone else's urgency. You may feel this as space opening around you. Fewer people interrupt. Fewer people challenge casually. There's a subtle deference that isn't respect in the traditional sense. It's caution mixed with acknowledgement. They don't know how far ahead you are, so they assume distance. Distance buys them time to think, time to recalibrate, time to avoid exposing assumptions that might already be outdated in your view. What they're really trying to determine now is whether your awareness compounds. One accurate alignment could still be isolated. Repeated alignment establishes trajectory, and trajectory implies momentum. They're watching to see if momentum continues without effort from you. So far, it has. That's why attention hasn't relaxed. That's why alertness hasn't faded. Because momentum without force suggests structural advantage, not situational luck. You're not escalating. That's the key detail. If you were escalating, they'd respond directly. Escalation invites confrontation. Continuation invites monitoring. You're continuing. You're letting outcomes arrive without commentary. That posture forces everyone else to do the interpretive work themselves. And interpretation under uncertainty is exhausting. It drains confidence over time. It makes people cautious by default. Some will try to align themselves quietly. They'll echo your language. They'll adopt your framing. They'll act as if they saw it too, just later. This isn't manipulation. It's survival behavior. When someone demonstrates reliable orientation, others adjust their own orientation to reduce exposure. That adjustment confirms your influence without you ever asserting it. Influence that doesn't announce itself is the hardest kind to counter. Others will disengage. They'll reduce visibility. They'll limit interaction, not because you're threatening, but because being around you highlights gaps they'd rather not examine yet. Awareness can be uncomfortable when it reveals delay, and you, by remaining steady, highlight delay simply by existing. The most telling shift is internal. People stop asking whether you're right and start asking when you noticed. Timing becomes the focus, because timing reveals depth, and depth reveals capacity. If you noticed early, it means you weren't waiting for permission. You weren't waiting for confirmation. You were already oriented correctly, while others were still gathering data. This is where the idea of being on the watch list becomes metaphorical rather than literal. It's not about enforcement or authority. It's about cognitive priority. You occupy a slot in their mental landscape reserved for variables that require tracking. That slot is limited. Not many people ever occupy it. And once someone does, they don't get removed easily. Not unless they become predictable again. You haven't become predictable. You've become reliable. Those are opposites. Predictable people repeat patterns. Reliable people adapt without announcing it. You adapt internally, then remain externally consistent. That combination creates confidence in your accuracy without revealing your process. And process opacity is what sustains alertness over time. As this phase stabilizes, something else happens quietly. People begin adjusting their own behavior preemptively, based on what they think you might already understand. That's influence at a distance. You didn't instruct anyone. You didn't signal expectations. They adjusted themselves to avoid misalignment with someone they believe is ahead. That's when the environment truly shifts. By now, the unfolding is no longer surprising to them. It's instructive. It teaches them that early awareness matters, that restraint matters, that correctness without performance changes dynamics faster than noise ever could. And you, without seeking any of this, have embodied that lesson. This is the final realization they arrive at, often without admitting it. You didn't win an argument. You didn't prove superiority. You demonstrated alignment with reality ahead of time, and then refused to dramatize it. That forced everyone else to confront their own delay. And once that confrontation happens, alertness isn't temporary. It becomes the new baseline. You continue forward, not faster, not louder, not more visible, correctly. And correctness, once established as baseline, doesn't fade. It compounds, it restructures, it changes how everything around it behaves. And long after the surprise wears off, long after the reactions settle, one thing remains true in the background of every calculation they make. You saw it coming, you stayed composed, and whatever comes next, you're probably already there too.